I need you to hate so I can use you for your energy.
This is Real Sales Talk. Real sales advice from real sales practitioners. Giving you tips on how to dominate your sales quota are your co-hosts, Sean Mitchell and Phill Keene. What's going on, everyone? It's Real Sales Talk. Phill and Sean going live with another episode. This is season 7, episode 6. Hope everyone is doing fantastic. Phill, what's going on with you today?
Busy. You and I have had a busy 2 weeks, so it has just been you and I on the podcast. But it's been kind of fun to be able to be guest on our own podcast and get some knowledge out there. And
we can do that. It's our own show. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, you and I have fun doing this, so might as well have fun with it. Hopefully, our listeners are having fun with it too.
Absolutely. And by the way, we've got like the next 3 episodes ironed out, maybe even 4. We've got them scheduled here for the next 7 days, and so we should be able to pound out some new guests and some really interesting ones. Maybe we'll just do a few teasers. I'm pretty certain that we're pretty locked in for a few of these. So we talked about this one, but we've got someone who developed a lot of notoriety in the sales, the auto sales space, leveraging video to tell a story of a product, to provide value. Excuse me. And then I've also got, I think we've got this locked in. I had to move the date around, but we've got the real estate agent who sold Hugh Hefner's Playboy Mansion. He's going to be coming on the show. He's a luxury real estate agent. And I think we're going to be talking about how to professionally follow up with leads without being an annoying salesperson.
Yeah, we have some awesome shows coming. We're going to hit you guys. It's going to be 4 episodes probably coming at you guys really quickly over the next 2-3 weeks. So be on the ready. You guys are going to have some hopefully morning listening coming into the morning commute or going home. Or if you're sitting in your office, definitely something to put some headphones in and listen to. So I'm excited about the next 2 weeks.
And while it's fresh on my mind, I just want to give a shout out to Kyle Gutzler. He was a guest on our show a few seasons ago. He gave us a shout out on LinkedIn. So really appreciate that. And for those that find themselves listening to our podcast in the car and think our audio could be improved, I agree, and I apologize if we've blown out your speakers. We're going to work on that. In fact, that's going to happen very, very soon. So we're going to make some improvements. In fact, with this episode, I will make some improvements with it. What I've got control, and then here soon, I think we'll be able to make some significant improvements in the next several weeks. So, with that said, Phill, you've got something new that's been going on. You've actually transitioned into a quota carrying sales role recently. In the last couple of weeks. So first of all, congratulations, and second of all, how's it going for you?
2 weeks in, so it's going. Getting pipeline built really early, starting. Have nothing. I went from 0 in pipeline to all right. We're gonna have to figure out how to hit the ground running and get some pipeline built quickly. And it goes back to what we talked about episode probably beginning of January when I transitioned to a director of marketing role, which was I want to be a CRO. That's my ultimate goal. I want to get into the C-level and own the sales organization, and then whatever else fits into that revenue scope. And after a few conversations with a few mentors of mine, it kind of came back to the conclusion that you have to go carry a bag again. So I've done it before. I've done it 3 times in my career, but I want to do it in SaaS. So it's one of those things now. It's like, all right, go carry a bag in SaaS and go do that well. And I'm excited to make that transition over. So I'm taking the Southeast region as well as TOLA. So I have a pretty big territory.
For the uninitiated, what does TOLA stand for?
TOLA, it is Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Alabama.
I should know that, I guess. I'm from Texas, so I don't know why I don't know that, but I don't.
Yeah, so it's that little like the Southeast region kind of swinging back down to Texas area.
Yep. I mean, Texas is you could feed off of Texas in itself. It's so massive.
Yeah, it is a very large state.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So you're starting into a new role, and in fact, we can probably jam on this together because we're both going through the same thing. How do you get that pipeline started? Where do you start?
Yeah.
What do you look at? What opportunities? Where do you find them? Is it in person? Is it expired leads? Talk about that.
Yeah. So I think it's probably three parts, and we can break it down and probably go in depth. So let's start. Probably the first low hanging fruit would be Salesforce or whatever your CRM or whatever your data storage system is. There's a lot of things that are sitting in there today that have not been touched or worked. And if you've had any historical knowledge of the company, which I do because I've been there now for almost 4 years, I have historical knowledge of who is a good rep and who is a bad rep. So going back and looking at the good reps and how they worked certain accounts and things they started getting traction on. So I started to look at those types of accounts. I'm actually pulling back to things that we lost customers, lost opportunities from 2.5 years ago, where we've enhanced our product so much Octave in the last 2.5 years. It's almost a completely different product now. So going back and reaching out to those people and just making the introduction. So I sent out 600 emails last week, and that went out to people as just purely as an introduction of, I'm your new point of contact at Octave. I want to introduce myself. You might formerly know us as Tinderbox. Here's things that might have changed since the last time we spoke. And I went back and looked at notes of why they spoke to us, why they came to us in the past. So if they came to us for a proposal use case, well, hey, let me tell you about how we've enhanced how we do proposals or how we do contracts or whatever it was. So I looked at the detailed notes that were actually in Salesforce, and I reached out to them with a very specific message around, you spoke to this person. These are the things that I know about you. How's that project going? And then just kind of figure out where things evolved. And I also had to do some other research of things like looking at LinkedIn to see if Sean, are you still at that company or not? No, you're not. Great. Did you move into a company that I can still target? So, hey, Sean, you spoke to us when we were Tinderbox. We've actually made a lot of enhancements since 2 years ago. Or it's the same thing. I'm going to reach out to the new person at the contact at the company, the same title. So here's a new sales operations person. Sean, I'm going to reach out to you today because I spoke to Steven 3 years ago, and this is why it makes sense for us to talk again. So just taking those notes and that knowledge, I think that's critical for salespeople, is to take credit for the work that we've done as a company already and use that as a point to drive conversation. So that's really where I started my week out last week, 2 weeks ago.
So was that 600 individual emails? Because it sounds like you're customizing each one.
I mean, there's some consistency across the board. So what I did is I segmented things out based off of the type of solution they looked at, and they checked the box. And then I looked at what state they're out of, and then I looked at any other solutions they currently have, any competitors they looked at. So there's some segmentation to it. And then I wrote custom emails for like 15 different segments. And then what I did is I mass emailed like 20 or 30 people, and I would customize individual inside of it. So I would actually I had a spot where I had to go change the name or change like the new point of contact, that kind of stuff. So I went and customized little details inside of it. So it gave me some scale to go get 600 emails out there. And I had a 53% response or open rate, and I had like a 12% response rate. And that was when it just started. So
that's solid. That's great. Yeah. Did you include any resources, PDFs, white papers, links to anything in those emails?
So I didn't. I think it's actually something where it's easy to get caught in the spam filter, whatever, especially if it's a new URL, which we are a new URL emailing, because it used to be Tinderbox for a lot of those people. Since it was Octave, and it was our first email, I was very hesitant to drop any links inside of it. The rule of thumb is two URLs per an email. So, and there's typically a URL in the bottom of our signature. So we use Sigster, and there's a URL already in that, baked into it. So I want to be very careful of the amount of URLs I'm putting in there. And then I would actually follow it up, most of those, with an invite to a webinar that we have about future work. So that I made a very, very templated email that then I can send out to those same 600 people again as a second touch point of, hey, I just want to send this to you. Here's some things to think about. You should check out our webinar that I think it makes sense for you to attend. And it was relevant to everybody that I sent it back to.
Cool. I'll share something similar in just a different angle. Like, in my new role as a real estate agent, in essentially a new city. I mean, we moved to Denver about a year and a half ago. When we moved here, I was at a SaaS company, and I had the Northeast region. So I didn't have the good fortune of being local and, having to network and build relationships. My relationships were built on the East Coast. So I'm essentially starting in a quote unquote brand new territory. So for me, one of the things that I think would provide some value to our audience is, so this is June when we're recording this. In May, people in Denver received the notification on property assessments values, and in Denver, it's just a really nutty market, and so in many cases you can dispute how much the value of your home has been assessed at. If you feel like if it's gone up too high, you can dispute that. And so this is one of those things where it was important to catch people at the right time. So the month of May was very much about me using that timeline as a tool to say, hey, I'd love to provide some comps for you if you'd like to dispute this assessed value with the county that you live in. So I went to an app called Nextdoor, and it's basically like Facebook, but it's geofenced, so only people that are in your neighborhood can have access to this online community, online forum. So I went in there and I was like, hey, most of you probably got your assessment, and if you want me to run some free comps, just let me know. Send me a message. And so I actually built a small group, a small book of business in my neighborhood, where it was the first contact, and I didn't ask for, I didn't even ask to sell their home or anything. I just wanted to provide some value. But for someone who's starting out from scratch in a new territory, think about the season that you're in, whether it could be a spring, summer, winter, fall, and see if you can take advantage of anything that would couple value with that season, like what I did with this assessed value that people received.
Yeah, and I think in a B2B setting, I think you're looking at things like setting fiscal budget, looking at end of quarter, end of month, end of whatever that end of period, selling period would be. I think there's things like that can accelerate deals. I think there's, I like the idea of actually reaching out to people around holidays, because I know they're actually going to be out of office. Mm-hmm. So the idea is to email them when they're out of office, to try to get direct numbers and get additional points of contact. Because a lot of times it's, hey, I'm not here. It's Friday before 4th of July. I cut out early. But you actually want to email Sean Mitchell, my co-host for Real Sales Talk. Here's Sean's email address. And now I have a second point of contact that I know is in a chain of command that is close enough to that person that I can reach out to additionally if I'm looking from a pure prospecting side. I think it's a great way to map an account and build an account out. And then it's easy to figure out reporting structures from there. Or you actually might get the step up if you're emailing director level. You actually might get a VP level of point of contact there. So I think it's a great way as actually reaching out during holidays. There's always things that you can trigger off of. For Indiana, we love basketball, we love racing. So for me, it's always March Madness. I always reach out to people, and 2 years ago, I sent them a John Wooden leadership book, and I had a spot where I really like inside that book, and I marked it and sent it out, and I sent out like 50 of them and got back like 13, 14 responses off of it. And I think that's something where it was unique enough because it was us, and it was March Madness, and it was Indiana, and there was a lot of that. Using things like your alma mater around March Madness always works. I'm from Indianapolis, so Butler basketball is a really big deal. So I went and looked up everybody that went to Butler and sent them an email about Brad Stevens leaving and how that was sad, and the Final Four run that they had when they were a small team. Like, there's things that you can use as triggers around certain times of the year, especially when there's things that are very, very well known in your area that you can use as triggers. If you have a good football team that was in your alma mater, like, use that as a, hey, can you believe we're top 25 again, or that we got snubbed to get out of the top 25? and then use that as a point of, and like, just to get the conversation started. There's a lot you can do with that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about lost opportunities, right? Going through your CRM, Salesforce, or any other, and taking a look at lost opportunities. We've talked about taking advantage of seasons, dates, timelines, special events to try and capitalize on that. Let's talk a little bit about, and we probably touched on this before, but it can't hurt to do it again. Putting yourself in places where your ideal buyer is at. So for me, I've talked about this where I've started to involve myself in Tesla owner, Denver Tesla Club. So owners of Teslas, these are ideal types of clients that I'm looking for, because they're typically high net worth, which means that the home that they need to sell or that they're in the market to buy is going to be better than maybe the average sale price here in Denver. But what about you, Phill? What comes to your mind when you think about involving yourself in areas where your ideal buyer is at?
So I'm fortunate that we sell to sales and sales ops. So I happen to be on a podcast where we talk to sales and sales ops. So that helps. I actually run a local sales chapter for AAISP. So it's a networking group for salespeople that I help co-run with Mary Browning from Amplify, which is the Adam Weber company that he came on the show. So his SDR director was a good friend of mine, and Mary and I started the chapter back about 2.5 years ago. And I think a lot of what, like I told you, I've always wanted to be a CRO. So everything I've always done has been to put myself in a position to where I can make a network to get myself to be a CRO. And I've always thought of that. So I've been fortunate that I sell to salespeople. So what I'm doing is mutually beneficial for my long-term career as well as my short-term in sales right now. So I started a local chapter, or started back up the local chapter with Mary. Just little things like that. And then going out there, just really just putting yourself out there. And I know you do this as well, is just reach out to other real estate people, big people in real estate. So I reach out to people in sales that are big names in sales, and I get to know them. That's how I know the Trish Bertuzzi's of the world and the Steve Richards of the world and the Ralph Barcion. Like, those are the types of people that you meet because I'm just genuinely curious about sales. So I just want to talk to them. Like I could geek out about sales for hours and hours and hours. And Sean and I have done this obviously a number of times. So I'm just passionate about sales. So I think that's beneficial for me. And then getting out there on the internet, like, just, there's so many forums and so many different things you can talk to people on. There's a sales tech stack Slack group. There's an email chain called Modern Sales Pros that you have to get invited into. Like, there's little things like that. Like, it's just great people to interact with and know. And again, it's mutually beneficial because I sell to salespeople.
Yeah, and you touched on what we're doing here as a way to network with people that are mentors as well as business opportunities. And I think that's a really great idea. I mean, if you're in B2B or even B2C, doing something like this, creating a podcast or creating a YouTube show, is brilliant. And that's actually the guest that I was talking about, who was in auto sales, how she got to where she's at right now. And I just think it's like, there's so many opportunities with the internet, whether, if you're not a video person or an audio person, maybe you're really great at written and you want to create, you want to do something like what Daniel Disney is doing with LinkedIn, where he's just got a massive following of people because he's creating valuable content. And there's just so much opportunity. But I really like the idea of the podcast thing. It's what it's what a lot of salespeople are doing. Scott, what's his last name?
Scott Ingram. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's what Scott Ingram is doing. He's a sales rep, and he's doing a podcast to create business opportunities. And what better way to get connected with people than to reach out to them and say, hey, I'd like to interview you for my podcast.
Yeah.
And such a much more natural way than to say, hey, do you want to buy my product?
Absolutely. And sometimes it's not even with malicious intent or intent to sell. There's just something where you're just genuinely curious. And I think like, so Sean and I, we don't spend a lot of money on this podcast. Like, it's not like we're investing time more than anything. And it's just, we're using Google Hangouts, we're recording the Google Hangout, and then we're taking the audio, we're ripping it, putting it onto the podcast world. We're putting the video up on YouTube, and we're using all these different mediums to reach out to people. But it's not a heavy time investment, where really it's more of just doing it, just getting out there and putting yourself out there. And we've met some really great people because of it. And I think that no matter where we end up, and you and I we actually talked about this. We started this because we're just genuinely curious. Scott Ingram, same thing. He's just genuinely curious to talk to really smart people, and it's a great way to do that. So just start, just do something. If you want to guest, Sean and I will be your first guest. It doesn't like, just let us know. We're here to help you out. And so feel free to reach out if you have questions about getting the podcast thing started up. It's Sean at realsalestalk.live and Phill at realsalestalk.live. But there's something to it. I think there's something to just putting yourself out there and trying to figure things out.
And, to add to that, there's a lot of stuff you can do. I mean, we're not even tapping into all the stuff that we could do with this podcast. But, if you start interviewing people that are in your ideal market, your ideal customers, you can start taking that stuff and creating sound bites out of it, and then started to share that out as a content curator. Yeah. And what's going to happen is you interview someone who's an ideal customer of yours, you take sound bites out of that and you share that out and you tag them. Guess what they do? They share that out as well, right? Because right. It's just kind of how it goes. People talking about you want to share that thing, so to kind of build that reach and awareness, and it's just reciprocal.
So that actually leads me to my second thing I've been really pushing hard on over the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to focus on, I have a big territory, a really large territory. So I'm going to focus on 4 cities. I'm going to focus on Atlanta, Raleigh, Nashville, and Austin. And those are good patches for me to go work. But I want to make a really big thing small, so it's easy for me to focus. So right now I'm only putting my focus into Atlanta, and that's all I'm doing. It's a really large city with a lot of people I can sell to, with a lot of people that I know already. So I'm using that to really just go out there. So I'm actually going to spend 2 days. I'm flying out to Atlanta on the 20th and 21st of June. And I've been asking people I know hey, can you just put me in touch with a really smart VP of sales? I just want to grab a coffee. I want to sit down and talk to them and just meet them. And I really do just want to meet them. I'm not looking to sell to them yet. I mean, eventually, if there's a right fit and it all works out, then perfect. But right now, I just want to know every VP of sales that I can possibly meet in Atlanta. And I want them all to know who I am and where I'm from and what my company does. And I think there's something right now, I'm not pitching. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the financial services guy who, hey, I'm going to get you, let's do the buddy-buddy relationship. I want to meet you for a relationship, and then I'm going to come and throw this piece of paper in front of you and tell you how I can manage your money. Like, don't do that to me. If you ever do that to me, I will call you on it. But there's something like, if you actually naturally want to network and meet and get to know people, it's going to come off that way. And then I actually got enough traction that I started to plan a dinner out. So I'm going to throw a bigger dinner and we're going to invite customers to that dinner as well. So it's natural conversation of, how'd you get here? Well, yeah, we got invited by Octave. We actually use Octave. I'm an Octave customer. And that natural conversation then happens between those prospects and those customers. And I don't have to be the one that owns that first conversation about what Octave is. It's a very interesting way to think about it, but I'm going to spend 2.5 days in Atlanta and really just attack one city as hard as I possibly can. And meeting old acquaintances, meeting new acquaintances, being introduced to new people, walking around offices, like all of that. And I'm really out there to build my brand in Atlanta.
I find it ironic, Phill, that the 3 or 4 cities that you've mentioned are incredibly fun, great cities to actually go and party in. So is there some ulterior motive here?
No, of course not, Sean. Of course not. No, Nashville is a wonderful city. So I chose Nashville My brother-in-law lives there, so I get free room and board if I need it. And it's actually not terrible. It's like a 7-hour drive if I actually want to drive it, but I'll probably fly. Austin, we have some traction in Austin, but only a few customers. But our friend Scott Ingram, you were there. So Scott, shout out. I've already reached out to him. There's Kenny Madden's already in Austin. Atlanta is just, there's a lot of great companies that I know in Atlanta, a lot of great people I know in Atlanta already. And Raleigh is where my old VP of sales is from. So, or my current VP of sales, he was there, sorry, and he moved to Buffalo, but he has a lot of contacts in Raleigh. So that's why I chose those 4 cities. It made sense, but I make those the cities that I can start in and just find one new point of contact, one new person to reach out to. You just build your name and your brand in that city.
Awesome. Any other thoughts?
I think the biggest thing, if you do that too, the same way that what we talked about, our second point of go there, go where people are, like go be in front of your ideal customer, like go to a city, be face-to-face, go to a meetup. If you're a real estate person, go to a real estate meetup in the city you want to be in. If you're a salesperson and you're looking to target Atlanta, go to a sales meetup in Atlanta. Like go invest your time there. I think that's something you have to build your name and your brand there. If your company's not there, the only way to feel local, where they feel like they want to do business with you, is to be there. And I think that it's not as easy for everybody, but I think you make a case for it. So go set 10 meetings up, and I guarantee your boss can say, "All right, yeah, you can go take those 10 meetings in face to face." There's value to it, right?
Yeah, totally. I love it. I think this is very practical, don't you? This is really good.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is where my head's at. And then really everything else, I've had now 12 meetings that are actual prospect meetings since I've started in 2 weeks. And my success rate to get a next step is 8 out of 12. The other 4 I disqualified. I disqualified and told them they weren't a fit. And really half of it was just asking, right? Just saying, hey, the next step for me typically here is you bring on 2 other counterparts or 1 other counterpart or whatever they said in the conversation of people that might be involved in the decision maker process. We slow it down a little bit. We talk a little bit more in depth, and then we actually show you just a high level walkthrough of the product. And then I set the calendar invite while we're talking on the phone. It's going to be Tuesday at 2:00. That's my always my go-to if I don't know what time it is. Tuesday at 2. Tuesday at 2:00, we're gonna set up time, and usually people deny Tuesday at 2 because they're always doing something at that time. I don't know why, it just never fails. But Tuesday at 2, are you available? No. Great. What about 3:30 on Thursday? I'm available. Great. And you ask for a very specific time, because here's what happens now. If Sean, if I ask you, Sean, are you available next week? What's it look like for you? You're pretty busy. Oh, great. So if you look at your entire calendar, you look at the entire week, you say no to next week. And then what do I have to do? What about the week after that? No, I'm still pretty packed. Okay, great. What about 3 weeks from now? Can I have a conversation with you 3 weeks from now? You know your chance of you actually showing up to that meeting 3 weeks from now? Because guess what? You're probably gonna be pretty busy 3 weeks from now. Versus asking for a very specific time, which is, are you available Tuesday at 2:00? I am, or I'm not. Because what it's gonna force you to do is actually physically look at your calendar and look at that very specific time. And then you usually can find another time that works for them. So you'll know that they have it open. And once you ask the question, Sean, are you available Tuesday at 2? Silence. Just stop talking. And what you'll hear, the person will say, are you still there? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were checking your calendar. Like you don't have to, you can ask the question, use your breath, use your talking and your tone as your friend there. So I think that's the way I go to the next step is I ask for that time on their calendar. And you get it most times. As long as you've been cordial and you've done all the things, you've been respectful, and there is a need to take the next step, they're going to do it.
What I typically will do in that case when I'm trying to set the next step in the conversation or the next appointment, I'll do the alternative choice. And you could start very high level, or you could go with a specific day. But I'll say something like, does beginning of the week or end of the week work best for you? Oh, end of the week. Okay, cool. So is Thursday or Friday best? Let's do Thursday. Okay. Is afternoon or morning? work better for you, and then you kind of narrow it down and you know, work them down the funnel of commitment, and get them to agree to a time.
Yeah, I also think something where I like the assumptive close, where I don't even really ask and say, hey, I'm putting time on my calendar for the same time we're talking right now. The reason why that works, so think about this. Your calendar is organized by blocks of time. So because your calendar is organized in blocks of time, you are willing to take a meeting with me at the current time I'm talking to you. So there's a really good likelihood that this same time next week and the week after that and the week after that and the week after that still works. So when I just say, Sean, I'm going to put a calendar invite for the same time next week. Does that work for you? It does. That works like 85% of the time because it's almost always open. I actually do the same thing for prospects. So if somebody puts a request in for a demo or a contact us form, if you call them back at the exact same time, at the exact same day of the week, and because you can't get a hold of them, there's a really high likelihood that they're just sitting at their desk looking at their computer, because guess what they were doing 3 weeks ago? Sitting at their desk looking at the computer at that specific time. Like, people are creatures of habit. So if you work within the habits that people actually have, they're willing to do things for you. And I think that's something where you're not trying to force them into changing and figure out different things and different times and all that. Just let them be who they are and work inside their times. So I think that's one of the easiest things, I think, to take away from this. If you take anything, as people are creatures of habits, and their calendars are their calendars. So ask for blocks of time that you know are open, and reach out to them in times you know they're open. Love it.
Cool. So let's go ahead and wrap up. And we're going to try something new here, since we're not going to do rapid fire. We did that last week with you. Let's do, so what's your process look like, Real Sales Talk family? What's your process look like for when you get into a new territory or you start generating a new pipeline? What are your tricks of the trade, or things that you found that have worked or are working for you currently? I want you to, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, put them in the comments below. If you're listening to the audio version of this, go to the notes of this podcast description and click on the link to our Twitter pages. And if you want to go, just type it in right there. If you're in front of your computer, it's at Phill Keene, right? And at Sean M. Mitchell. At Phill Keene and at Sean M. Mitchell. And just give us your tricks of the trade. And we'll share those on the next episode when we get a chance to collectively come back on. I want to try some engagement here and just test it out. So if you're watching this on Facebook, go ahead.
Use the hashtag Real Sales Talk, because then you could actually start interacting with other Real Sales Talk people. That way you can start building a community. Sean and I don't want to be the only two people that are talking sales in the Real Sales Talk family. We want you guys to start interacting with each other and grow this into a really nice community.
We do like listening to ourselves, but it is much funner when other people are involved.
Absolutely.
All right, Real Sales Talk. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a great night.